welcome back to another episode of the Set at Home Mom, and I wanted to give you my thoughts and opinions on whether schools should be opening for the 2021 school year. And I give you this opinion based on the fact that I was a public school teacher and worked in the public schools for 10 years. I have family and friends that work in the public schools. And just to get an idea of where I am, I live in the North Texas area, and I happen to live in a pretty rural county. Even though there's a couple of medium-sized suburbs, for the most part, it's still very rural. I lived in a very large county that was pretty suburban. I lived in a large suburban, very hugely populated city, but not like Dallas huge or anything like that. And then I worked in a rural county, or worked in a rural district in the same county, but further apart. So there's all these things going on about as we're finishing up the school year. What is next year school year going to look like? And there's a lot of articles and there's things being stated from teachers unions about like this. Now teachers unions, their focus is on the well-being of the teacher and not the student. They tend to look out for the teacher. Okay. And sometimes that's well-intended and sometimes it's not, because education should be about the child and what is best for the child alone. And schools, there's things saying that, okay, well, kids are going to have to probably continue distance learning. We're going to have to do alternating days, half capacity, having a mix of kids here and there, shorter like half days, having things like using the spaces like the cafeteria and the gym and the library as classroom space. Did I mention desks 6 feet apart, keeping kids socially distant? I freaking hate that word, guys. Okay. Keeping them distanced from each other, and so on and so on. And everything I've read on the articles, it always mentions that the virus is, for the most part, mild in children, but that the risk is for the teachers and potentially vulnerable teachers and even students, because you do have a lot of teachers over 65. You're going to have pregnant teachers and teachers with other health issues. Now, one thing that's very important is, remember, teaching is always a choice. It's kind of like when you decide to be a nurse, you take on those potential risks that may happen. It's the same thing as a teacher. You take on any potential risk, and that means knowing that you're going to go get sick at some point from your students. Very early on, when I first started working with kids, that was actually in a daycare setting, and just slowly in the years went on, like in those early on years, like I kind of did get sick a lot. I got strep throat, pink eye. I don't know if I ever really got the flu or not, but I got sick quite a bit until I had developed like a stronger immune system, and pretty much hardly ever. I mean, I might have been one of those, like, I took a sick day once a year, and then the only other time I was really ever off was like for maternity leave or a doctor's appointment, and then maybe once because my kid was sick herself and my grandparents couldn't take care of her or whatever. So this is kind of crazy. Okay, we teachers know we're going to get sick. We should be doing stuff to build our immune system. We should be more responsible about washing our hands before we eat. Guilty, because I sometimes would forget because I was so dang hungry and had 25 minutes to eat my food. That is, you would forget to wash my hands after, touching things that kids were touching, because kids are lazy. They don't wash their hands. They pick their nose. They put their fingers in their mouth. They chew on things. Like, this is just kind of what kids do. I mean, during flu season, they were really good about wiping down and cleaning everything. Like, when flu season was really high, we'd have as much as 10% of kids not in attendance and a lot of staff out due to sickness. And the whole thing is about, well, they're all asymptomatic. Well, we're all asymptomatic carriers, especially kids, for hundreds of viruses and bacteria. But there has not been any evidence, to my knowledge, which, if that's changed, somebody can drop a link down in the comments below, that children at least under the age of 10 have not been an asymptomatic spreader to any adults. And I also think that this is going to be it's probably been kind of traumatizing to a lot of kids anyway, to go in this huge shift of a routine of suddenly being kind of homeschooled. And I use that lightly. To, everything just drastically changing with no notice. And it's really hard on kids. And it is going to be hard when the school year starts, because you just had this huge change and shift in things. And kids are going to have a hard time coping with that. But the more changes you throw on these kids, the more stress and trauma it is probably going to cause for certain kids. Certain kids will adapt, some kids won't. It's going to cause more behavior problems. It's going to probably cause more of a financial strain and cost on families when if their kid can only go to school 3 days a week and they have to find childcare for the 2 days a week while they still have to try to go to work. And I think schools would try to truly be flexible around that, but at some point schools are going to do what they are going to do. And, all these not all these teachers, but I have a lot of teachers that I've seen post about how they're just so concerned about, we can't open school in August unless everyone stays home all summer. We got to stay in lockdown. People the whole point of flattening the curve was not to stop people from getting sick and stop people from dying. It was to prolong this virus, like people getting the virus, in order to get hospitals prepared. First it was just the home was 2 weeks, then 4 weeks, and then 6 weeks. And in some places it's 8 weeks. In some places they're like, you're indefinitely closed until July. Okay? Because some people have it in their head that this virus is going to die out. And, I saw one lady said, would you really send your kids back to school if they could get someone sick or the teacher could get sick? Do these teachers really want to go back? Yes, I would go back to work, especially when I hear how stressful some teachers have it of trying to do online stuff. And I was a special ed teacher. I could not freaking imagine how much harder that is to try to service special education students over a computer, especially at the elementary level. It just would not be realistically possible and probably would not be very beneficial. And trying to do IEP meetings and all that kind of stuff, trying to schedule that, but trying to keep kids socially distanced at school is just not possible, especially when you think at the elementary level, how many times kids have so much, group activities and small groups were just huge, okay? Because it got them to collaborate and work together, peer-on-peer stuff, because this is kind of what the current science was saying. This is how kids learn best, when they work in groups. And then the teacher needs to work in small groups, because that way she can focus on what skills or standards kids are lacking in. So that's how, when I taught in the schools, most desks were all you had just clumps together at a table, because there was always so much group involvement going on, and kids in groups and rotating to stations, because that was kind of the model. A whole group lesson, and then everyone split off to do what they needed to do. And it's just this isn't gonna work, guys. You just need to kind of suck it up and realize that all the data out there is showing that for healthy individuals under the age of 65 are just fine. Could you have teachers going into early retirement? Are you going to have teachers quit because this is too hard for them? Yeah, it's possible. Are you going to have parents that are going to go, screw that, this is way too hard, I'm just going to unenroll them and homeschool them? Yes, you are. And then people are going to say that, well, okay, now we're getting less funding because we have lesser enrollment. Because that's how schools, at least in Texas, get their enrollment. So they're we need more federal government. There's already way freaking too much money in public education, way more than there has ever been. But they keep just adding a lot more administration positions, and that's kind of another just a beef of mine in general. So what should they do? Have total normal school resuming in August, and you teach big on hygiene with children. You make them wash their hands, even if that adds an extra 30 minutes to your whole school day. because you have them washing their hands constantly and then being responsible and cleaning off their desk and things like that, which you can just do with like, vinegar, water, and a paper towel, so you don't have to worry about it being toxic to children or anything like that. It's just, you stress that hygiene, which kids, that should really be stressed way more than it is in school. Plenty of times we'd send kids to lunch and like we wouldn't have them wash their hands. We know kids don't wash their hands after they go to the bathroom. I've seen plenty, and I would send them back to the bathroom to wash your hands. Go to that sink over there and wash your hands. I still have to do it with my own children. And, I don't understand the whole thing of like teachers just saying, well, we just need to wait this out. We need to keep things closed down and not go back. And that's not true. Like, that's kind of nonsense, in my opinion. And, offer distance learning for those kids that are truly at risk, your medically fragile children, and maybe some of those children in the high risk category, which at least which I don't know what that is for kids. I don't know. They say the immune compromised kids, but those immune compromised kids go to school all the time, even during flu season and all sorts of stuff. Like, we don't know if there's any evidence that the virus is more harmful in people with immune compromised system, especially in children, because there's no evidence in it, because everyone with symptoms is for the most part adults. And so you would think, what about those teachers that are over 65? What about the teachers that are obese? What about the teachers that are diabetic? Like, these seem to be some of the greatest risk factors of those that die due to this virus. Well, that's when it's time for the school to make a different plan, especially for that teacher. Oh, mask. I forgot about mask. I did see something about, I think it was New Jersey, saying that students were going to need to start wearing masks. Y'all, that is the craziest thing, and it's going to cause more problems and way more things, because can you imagine a kid going that long with a nasty face mask all day, and it's supposed to go home and get washed, because it ain't going to get washed. You can't even get parents to open up their folders every day to see what work kids might have to do and things like that. Like, it so happens all the time, and it was so frustrating. It was like, tell your mom to check your backpack, and then they don't do it. So those face masks aren't going to get washed. And what is the teacher supposed to do? Take them home every day and get them washed? And then what about when she forgets? What about when the kid forgets his mask? Like, the mask. Crazy. I think most people realize that's not realistic. Because what are they going to do? They're going to take it off. They're going to complain about it. Like, it's going to be nothing but drama, and your teacher ain't going to want to stand for that anyway. Anyway, like, I'm still thinking the whole thing is crazy for the most part, when most of the data is overwhelmingly positive, and when you break it down by statistics and knowing that 99% of people do just fine, especially if you're young and healthy. So leave me a comment and don't forget to subscribe.